Midnight to 0:30, narrator's voice. Calm yet mysterious. It was supposed to be just another evening. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a deep amber glow across the quiet town of Willow Creek. The streets, lined with dimly lit lamps, flickered against the darkening sky. It was peaceful, predictable, but that night, something would happen that no one in town would ever forget. 0:31 to 1:30. The sound of footsteps echoed against the pavement as Sarah Lockwood, a local journalist, made her way home. She had spent the evening covering a town hall meeting. The usual small-town squabbles over zoning laws and school budgets. But as she turned the corner onto Maple Street, she noticed something odd. A man standing completely still under the street lamp, his face obscured by the shadows. He wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, just watching. 1:31 to 3 o'clock. Sarah's heart quickened. Was he waiting for someone? Was he lost? She hesitated for a moment before deciding to walk past him. As she drew closer, the air around her seemed to shift. Colder, heavier. She could feel his gaze burning into her. But he said nothing as she passed. She whispered a quiet, "Good evening." And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he responded, "Be careful, Miss Lockwood. Some stories are better left untold." 3:01 to 5 o'clock, Sarah froze. How did he know her name? She turned sharply. But the man was gone, vanished into the night, as if he had never been there. A chill ran down her spine. Something about his words unsettled her. She hurried home, locking the door behind her, trying to shake the eerie feeling that clung to her like fog. 5:01 to 7 o'clock, the next morning. Curiosity overpowered her unease. Sarah was a journalist. It was in her nature to dig deeper. She retraced her steps to the same street lamp, hoping to find some clue about the mysterious stranger. But there was nothing. No footprints. No trace of anyone having stood there. Back at her office, she pulled up town records, searching for any unusual incidents or people matching the man's description. Her search led her to an old newspaper article from 1985. The headline read, "Local reporter disappears after investigating mysterious stranger." 7:01 to 10 o'clock. Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the article. The missing reporter's name was Michael Reeves. He had been investigating a series of disappearances linked to an unknown figure. Witnesses described him exactly as Sarah had seen, a tall man in a long coat, standing beneath a street lamp. But the strangest part? Reeves' last article ended with the same words Sarah had heard the night before. Some stories are better left untold. What had she stumbled upon? 10:01 to 1300 hours. Determined, Sarah tracked down Reeves' last known location, an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. That evening, armed with only her notebook and a flashlight, she made her way there. The house loomed in the darkness, its windows like hollow eyes staring at her. The air was thick with silence. She pushed the door open, and it creaked painfully. Inside, dust coated every surface, the furniture covered in white sheets. But one thing stood out, a desk in the corner, paper scattered across it. Sarah stepped closer, brushing away the dust to reveal Reeves' old notes. 13:01 to 1700 hours. The notes detailed interviews with townspeople who had also seen the stranger. Some had ignored him, others had asked questions. And then, one by one, they had disappeared. The last entry was chilling. "He is watching. He knows I know. If I vanish, tell my story." Sarah's blood ran cold. A creak sounded from upstairs. She wasn't alone. 17:01 to 2000 hours. Her flashlight flickered as she turned toward the staircase. "Hello," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then a soft knock, coming from one of the rooms above. Against all logic, she moved toward the stairs, each step creaking under her weight. The hallway stretched before her, doors on either side. The knocking continued, steady, deliberate. Her heart pounded as she reached for the doorknob. She pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit room. And there, sitting at an old wooden desk, was a man. He was writing, his back to her. Slowly, he turned his head. It was Michael Reeves. 2001 to 2300 hours. Sarah gasped. You're supposed to be gone? Reeves finished for her, his voice calm. I was, and now I'm not. Her mind raced. This wasn't possible. Reeves leaned forward, his eyes dark and knowing. You should have listened. Miss Lockwood, some stories are better left untold. 2301, 26:00. Suddenly, the room began to shift. The walls trembled. The light dimmed. Sarah stumbled backward as Reeves stood. You still have a chance. He said, leave. Forget this place. Forget me. Sarah turned and ran, her breath ragged as she rushed down the stairs. The front door flung open before she could reach it, and standing there, beneath the street lamp, was the stranger. He tipped his hat. You were warned. 26:01, 29:00. Sarah bolted past him, sprinting through the empty streets, not stopping until she reached the safety of her home. She locked the door, her hands shaking. The house was silent, but when she turned on the lights, her desk was covered in papers, the same notes Reeves had written. Her hands trembled as she picked up the last page. It was new, fresh ink, and it read, some stories are better left untold. 29:01, 30:00. Sarah never spoke of that night. She deleted her notes, burned the papers. But sometimes, when she walked home late at night, she swore she could see him, the stranger, watching from beneath the street lamp, waiting, because some stories were never meant to be told. Midnight, sound, a distant clock ticking, footsteps echoing in an empty street, a soft wind howling. Narrator calm, yet mysterious. It started with a single note, folded neatly, placed carefully on the doorstep of an unsuspecting man. No signature, no explanation, just 8 simple words. You saw something you were not meant to see. Sound, paper rustling, deep exhale. 0:30, narrator lower tone. Building suspense, Daniel Carter wasn't the kind of man who entertained mystery, a retired journalist. He had spent years uncovering the truth, digging through lies, exposing secrets. But that was long ago. Now, all he wanted was peace. A quiet life in the small town of Crestwood. But peace is a fragile thing. And on this particular evening, as he stood on his porch staring at the note in his trembling hands, he knew something was about to unravel. Sound, door creaking open, the rustling of a jacket, footsteps moving inside. 1 o'clock, sound, clock ticking, distant thunder rumbling in the background. Narrator, steady, but laced with tension. Daniel stepped inside, locking the door behind him. His house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes a person feel watched. He ran a hand through his graying hair, exhaling slowly. Maybe this was a prank, some kid in the neighborhood playing games. But something about it, the crisp fold of the paper, the precise handwriting, felt deliberate. Sound, paper unfolding, a deep breath. He read the words again. You saw something you were not meant to see. The problem was, he had no idea what they were talking about. Or did he? Sound, a creak, soft, almost imperceptible. A floorboard shifting upstairs. 1:45, narrator quieter. Almost whispering, Daniel froze. He lived alone, had lived alone for years. His heart pounded, a slow and steady drumbeat in his ears. Someone was in the house. Sound, slow footsteps overhead. The faint shift of weight against wood. He moved carefully, reaching for the closest thing he could use as a weapon, a heavy iron fireplace poker resting near the hearth. His grip tightened around the cold metal. 1 step. 2. He made his way toward the staircase, ears straining for any sign of movement. Sound. Silence. Then, suddenly, a loud crash from upstairs. 2:30. Sound. Daniel inhaling sharply, his pulse quickening. He hesitated. Rational thought told him to call the police. But instinct, the one thing that kept him alive through decades of exposing dangerous truths, told him something else. If he was being watched, if this was intentional, calling the cops might not be an option. Sound. Another creak, closer now. He raised a fireplace poker, adjusting his grip. Then, with careful steps, he ascended the stairs. Sound. Slow, deliberate footsteps on wooden stairs. Breathing shallow. The hallway stretched before him, dark and endless. The only light came from a half-open door at the end. Sound. A faint tap, 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 like fingertips drumming against the surface. 3:15, narrator, lower. More intense. He reached the doorway and pushed it open. Sound, door creaking slowly. The room was empty. No signs of a struggle. No signs of forced entry. Just his desk, and on it, another note. Sound. Paper crinkling as he picks it up. This one was different. Shorter. Just 3 words. Sound. Daniel exhaled sharply. Look behind you. Sound. Silence. Then, the sound of breath, someone else's breath. Just behind him. 3:30. Sound. A slow, shuddering inhale. Daniel's breath catching in his throat. Narrator, tense. Almost whispering, Daniel's muscles locked. A chill slithered down his spine. He could feel it. Hot breath. Just behind his ear. Someone was there. Sound. A soft whisper. Unintelligible. Like words melting into the air. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to run. But his feet stayed rooted. His grip on the fireplace poker tightened until his knuckles turned white. Sound. A long silence. Then tap, tap, tap. Fingernails dragging against wood. Slow and deliberate. Then, in a voice barely above breath, sound. A raspy whisper. Distorted and unnatural. Voice. You shouldn't have come back. Sound. Daniel whirls around. Fast footsteps. A crash as he swings a poker. Through empty air. But there was nothing. No one. Sound. Heavy breathing. Silence. The room was empty. 4:15, narrator shaky. Unsettled, Daniel's pulse pounded. His own breath sounded deafening. He scanned the room, searching for what? A shadow? A figure? But there was only the desk, the chair, the note still crumpled in his fist. Sound. A creak. The door behind him, closing. Slowly, he spun. The door had been wide open when he entered. Now it was nearly shut. And then, sound, a sudden thud, as if something slammed against it from the other side. He stumbled back, heart hammering against his ribs. His mind raced. He wasn't crazy. Someone was in the house. Someone was playing with him. Sound. Silence again. But this time, something else. A faint sound. A scratch, scratch, scratch. Fingernails dragging down the door. 5 o'clock, narrator, low. Urgent, Daniel forced himself to move. He wasn't going to stand there like prey. He reached for the doorknob and yanked it open. Sound. Door creaking wide. Silence. The hallway was empty. The air felt wrong. Thicker. He could smell something faintly metallic. Blood? No. Something else. Sound. Distant drip, drip, drip. Water? Then he heard it. A voice. This time from downstairs. Distant, but clear. Familiar. Sound. Muffled voice. Calling out. Voice. Daniel, come downstairs. Narrator, tense. Breathless, it was his own voice. Sound. The faint, eerie echo of his own voice drifting up from downstairs. Narrator low. Almost breathless, Daniel's blood turned to ice. It was impossible. That voice, it was his. But it wasn't. There was something off, a distortion beneath it. Like a second voice whispering, just out of sync. Sound. Drip, drip, drip. The steady trickle of liquid somewhere in the house. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. His instincts screamed, don't go down there. But then, sound. Another voice. Different. Softer. A woman's voice. Trembling. Voice whispered. Desperate, Daniel, please help me. Narrator. Urgently. The breath left his lungs. His mind spun. That voice, her voice. Sound. Crack. With groaning under unseen weight. He knew that voice. He knew it. 6 o'clock, narrator. Quick. Panicked. It was Emily, his sister. The sister who had died 6 years ago. Sound. Daniel stumbles back, his heel catching on the rug. He almost falls. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. But before he could think, sound! Slam. The door at the end of the hallway shuts violently, shaking the walls. A guttural whisper curled through the air, slithering around him like smoke. Voice deep, layered, unnatural. Don't you want to see her again? Sound. Silence. Deafening silence. 6:30, narrator shaky. Breathless, Daniel felt something cold wrap around his wrist. He gasped, looked down, sound. A faint squelch, like flesh gripping flesh. A hand that wasn't his. Fingers wrapped around his arm. Pale, rotted, dripping something black onto the floor. And the worst part, sound, the faint drip of the black liquid hitting the wood. It was Emily's hand. Sound. Daniel chokes on a scream, stumbles back, the grip tightens. The fingers dug into his skin, pulling, tugging him forward, toward the staircase, toward the darkness below. Voice, Emily's, pleading, but wrong. Daniel, I need you, come with me. Sound, a low, wet chuckle from the shadows below. 7 o'clock, narrator whispers. Shaking, he knew, with absolute certainty, if he stepped down those stairs, if he followed that voice, he was never coming back. 7:30, sound. The air in the hallway grows heavier, thick, like walking through unseen water. Narrator low. Urgent, Daniel's muscles locked. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it, feel it in his throat. But that grip, that rotting, ice-cold grip, it was pulling him. Harder now. Sound. The wood beneath his feet creaks, a sound so sharp it cuts through the silence like a knife. He had to do something. Now. Sound. A deep, wet exhale from below, like something waking up. Voice, Emily's. Softer now. Like a memory. Danny, please. It hurts. Sound. The whisper turns into a sob. Broken. Shattered. Narrator whispers. Shaking. He had heard her cry like that before. The night she died. Sound. A distant, echoing scream, muffled, distorted, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. 8 o'clock. Sound. Daniel gasps, his vision blurs. Flashes, memories. Her face. Pale, drenched in water. Eyes open, but wrong. Voice, Emily. Weaker now. Don't let me be alone again. Danny, please. Narrator, urgent. Breaking, his breath hitched. It wasn't her. It couldn't be her. But what if? Sound. The hand yanks hard. Daniel stumbles. His foot hits the first step. Sound. A new hand, grabbing his shoulder, pulling him back. New voice, harsh. Familiar. Real, get away from it. Sound. Daniel gasps, his entire body jerks backward. 8:30, narrator wild. Breathless, he spun, his head snapping up. Someone else was there. Sound, heavy breathing. Another presence. It was a man. Tall, rough, his face half hidden in the shadows. But Daniel knew that voice. Sound. Thunder rumbles in the distance. The air shudders. Daniel whispers. Shocked, Dad? Sound. Silence. Dead. Cold. Heavy. 9 o'clock, narrator. Hushed. Terrified, but that was impossible. His father had disappeared years ago. The night Emily died. Sound. A deep, heavy creak from the stairs below. Something shifting. Moving. Father, low. Urgent. Desperate, you have to run. Son, now. Before it, sound, a scream, shrieking up from the depths of the house. Not human. Not Emily. Something else. Sound, bang. The light bulb above them explodes. Darkness. Only the sound of breathing. Something breathing too close. 9:30. Sound. The world narrows to darkness, thick. Suffocating. Daniel can't see. But he can feel something moving below. Crawling. Stretching. Narrator whispering. Breathless, the air was thick. Damp. Like standing at the bottom of a well. His father's grip on his arm was tight. Too tight. But Daniel couldn't focus on that. Not with the sound. Asterisk. Sound. Wet. Skittering movements echo up the stairs. Fast. Too fast. Father, hissing. Urgent move. Damn it. Sound. Daniel is yanked back. His feet barely catch the floor as his father drags him up the hallway. The walls seem closer now, pressing inward. Daniel, shaky. Hoarse, Dad, what is that? What's? Sound, a thud. Then another. A shape, rising from the stairwell. 10 o'clock, narrator, low. Terrified. Fast pace he turned. He shouldn't have. But he did. And he saw it. A thing that should not be. Sound. A sickening pop. Then another. Its body twists wrong. Unnatural. Like its bones are rearranging beneath its skin. Sound. A rasping inhale. Deep. Endless. A voice from inside it. Voice, Emily's. But wrong, you left me. Danny, you left me in the dark. Sound. Daniel stumbles back. His mind screaming at him to run, but his feet won't move. Father, angry. Desperate, it's not her. You hear me? It's not her. 10:30. Sound. The thing lurches forward. Its limbs crack, elongating. Fingers split into something sharp. Narrator, shaken. Whispering, but its eyes. Oh God. Its eyes, they were hers. Emily's eyes. Staring at him. Begging. Daniel, weak. Breaking Emily. Sound. The thing smiles. Its mouth stretching too wide. Voice, Emily's. But layered. Too many voices beneath it. Come with me. Danny, you promise. Sound. The air shifts. A force pulling Daniel forward, his vision tunneling, his body sinking. Father, screaming, fight it. Sound. Daniel gasps, snaps back. His father shoved him. Sound. A door slams. Darkness. Silence. 11 o'clock, the end. Sound. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. The door shakes once. Then stillness. Narrator. Slow. Breathless. Uncertain, and then nothing. No sound. No movement. Just the echo of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Sound. Daniel exhales shakily. His father grips his shoulders, forcing him to look away. Father, low. Firm. Terrified, listen to me. We do not speak of this. Ever. Daniel, weak. Trembling, but sound. His father's grip tightens. Father, hoarse. Final, she's gone. Sound, a long pause. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Walking away. Narrator, soft. Fading. But even as they left, Daniel knew, in the silence, in the empty dark, something still watched, still waited, because some promises can never be broken. Sound, a faint whisper. Almost lost in the wind, Emily's voice. Voice, Emily. Distant. Smiling, see you soon. Danny. Sound, a single knock. And then blackout.